going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Going the Distance podcast presented by ImmaculateSports.com. Twitter's at ImacSports.
Instagram is also at Immac Sports.
TikTok, YouTube, Immaculate Sports. It's episode 236, and it's the official March Madness episode pretty much here. The main point of this episode is we're going to go through a bracket, basically, and talk about what we like, what we don't like, some of the best games we're going to see this entire season, because it was an awesome college season, and this is when most people jump on and watch, but either way, it's going to be exciting, I think. Also, we had a little bit of baseball last night, and we'll talk about NBA, too.
Yeah, this is the first time I think we've ever done a full March Madness bracket on the show before, so that should be a fun time, and it's kind of a good time to do it because we're right in between spring training happening and the MLB season really starting to get going. I know we had a game last night, or this morning rather, in Tokyo, and we'll have one tomorrow morning as well too, but it doesn't make sense to do the full season preview right now. We're going to wait until next week to do that, and we'll be able to have a full episode on that. So this week, doing pretty much all basketball with the exception of the opener and some of the other stuff as well too. And that gives me a chance to go right into my opener. I'm going to be talking about Jacob Wilson and his big day yesterday, where he had 2 homers. His first multi-homer game, I believe, as a professional, happened in spring training, of course. Spring training OPS is now up to 795. Hasn't had the greatest spring, even with that OPS, I'd say, because going into that game, I think it was below 700. But the big thing with him this past offseason was saying that he put on weight, and good weight as well too, not just fat. He's put on a lot of muscle, and he's shown it so far in spring. Already has 4 homers. Didn't have a single one last year on the big league squad. And if we see him potentially tap into power, that's when we really start talking about Jacob Wilson being a really damn good baseball player. And perhaps we're starting to see that with him now, which is really cool as an A's fan.
Yeah. This was a big college basketball week for me. I was heavily invested in most of the conference tournaments, and especially the Mountain West, because there's a team I really liked, the Boise State Broncos, who were in there in the title game, got real close to that automatic bid, and everyone kind of knew they had to get that, because even though the Mountain West has been much better, this is kind of their last ride before everyone who is at least a top basketball school is going over back to the Pac. But anyways, the senior forward for Boise State, Tyson Dagenhart, had an amazing finish. They were rolling. They had big wins over Utah State, Colorado State, San Diego State. They come up just short. One of those last 4 out. And it makes sense. They got smacked by Colorado State in the championship. I didn't think they would, but it was an awesome end to the season.
Yeah. Which leads us directly to our bracket. So we're just gonna go through the way that it would appear, I assume, on like an ESPN bracket or whatever, if you're gonna go through it. So I guess we'll get started with Auburn's first game against either Alcorn State or Alabama State, or what's the SFPA?
St. Francis, Pennsylvania. It's currently playing. That's how I know.
Yeah, I figured it doesn't even matter for me to look up the 6 seeds, considering one of them won't be there. And likely the other one won't be there either. But Auburn for this one, I'd imagine, pretty easy here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which takes us to an 8-9 game between Louisville and Creighton. 2 pretty good basketball schools, 2 bird schools actually as well too. Yeah. Not having their best years, but still finding a way to make it to the tournament.
Yeah, exactly what you said. But I think Creighton is coming off a bigger slump than we're used to here. So I'm going to have to go with the Louisville Cardinals in the first round. 8 seed for a team that almost won the ACC championship. I'm not necessarily mad about them only being an 8, but they're going to have an advantage here against a 9.
I do want to preface with a lot of my picks here is I'm not an expert in this stuff. I watched a bit of college basketball this year, but there's going to be a lot of I'm going off the vibes on this one or something like that. Louisville actually was one of the teams I got to watch a bit in the ACC tournament during Stanford's kind of unlikely run into like the quarterfinals, I want to say. Louisville was there with them as well, and I believe was the team that took them down. So I'm going to pick Louisville to take down Creighton, who lost in the Big East championship game against St. John's, but got pretty manhandled in that game. I know that for sure. The next game, we have Michigan against UC San Diego. Pretty intriguing matchup here for us, at least, with I would call local team, but a West Coast small school team in UC San Diego, and they're first year of eligibility for the tournament.
Yeah, it's a pretty awesome story. And in my first couple of brackets, I was taking San Diego, but after I thought about it for a little bit, I can't pick against Michigan. The size difference is ridiculous. Most teams in college will go 3 guards, 2 forwards. Michigan has way more size than these guys. I think they're going to be able to pull it out, even if it's a close game.
Yeah, this is an interesting matchup. I did go UC San Diego, partially because of the vibes, and also because I did watch a little bit of their game against UC Santa Barbara, which they took them down, of course, in the semifinal. But UC San Diego is mauling everybody in that Big West tournament, and I obviously don't think they're going to destroy Michigan, but I think they have a good chance, and I know a lot of people are picking them to win this game, but I'm going to do it as well too. Just picking for the Big West when you go to a Big West school, you know?
Yeah.
Next game that we have a bit of polar opposites here, Texas A&M versus Yale. But Yale is definitely no slouch.
Yeah, this is actually the game on this side of the bracket I'm more intrigued with. I think Yale's going to get the job done. Texas A&M is one of those schools who I know they're a 4 here, but when things got tough in the SEC, they kind of faded away. They were losing games in overtime. They were getting tired. Yale loves to shoot the ball, just like San Diego. I think Yale is the one that gets the upset, though.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Yale as well, too. A&M, I believe, was out in the first round of the SEC tournament. Yale, considering that they're the only Ivy League school in here, I would think that they won the tournament for the Ivy League, even though they might not even have a tournament. But Yale does get my pick here as we move to another fun matchup with Ole Miss versus either SDSU or the Blue Blood and UNC.
I think either way here, I'm going to go with Ole Miss. It's really, really down years for both these two schools in the play-in, San Diego and North Carolina. It should be a great game tonight, but either way, I think Ole Miss has adapted a lot better to the new SEC style, and I think they're going to be okay in this tournament.
I'm going to pick the 11 seed here, SDSU or UNC. I'm not going to say which one it is because I don't want to stick to one right now and have that be wrong tonight. But these are two historical, good basketball program schools. Like you said, down years for both of them, but they're still in the tournament. They still have some decent experience on both their rosters with some runs in the recent years. But I'm gonna pick the 11 seed here, either SDSU or UNC. Iowa State versus Lipscomb.
I'm taking Iowa State here. I'm not going to think twice about it. I don't know much about Lipscomb, but I know that Iowa State played very well in one of the best conferences in the nation.
Yeah, I'm going to go the same route here. Iowa State, I think this one could be a blowout. Next up, Marquette versus New Mexico.
Yeah, I'm taking New Mexico. I'm taking the Lobos in this one. I've watched a lot. This is another one of those teams that gets hot at the right moment. We've seen them around this 10 spot the last 4 years. Now all their guys are seniors. I think they're finally going to get the job done. Marquette, again, the Big East is great. Marquette is a great shooting team. It just hasn't been their year so far.
Yeah. Well, I did rebuild New Mexico State in college football. And even though New Mexico was my rival in that rebuild, I think I'm going to pick them here as well, too. Like we were talking about earlier, Patino's son is the coach of this team as well, too. It'd be ridiculous to see both those teams match up, which I think is pretty much impossible unless they go to the Final Four or something like that. But I am going to take New Mexico as the 10 seed. Which takes us to a 2 versus 15. Pretty quick answer here, unless you're going the other way. Michigan State versus Bryant.
Yeah, I'm not going to be the one that tells you to pick Bryant here, and I didn't. It's Michigan State for sure, but I would keep an eye on those guys.
Yeah, I'm going to go Michigan State. Pretty easy. Next up, Florida. This is where Norfolk State is. I assume we both have Florida here, so I'm going to get your opinion.
Yeah.
Next up, 8 versus 9. UConn having a down year versus a 9-seeded Oklahoma.
Yeah, this is going to be a great matchup. Of course, Oklahoma, kind of a down year because it's not necessarily their fault, but they moved to the SEC, turned out to be a much better conference. They have Jeremiah Fears. He's going to be a lottery pick at point guard, but it's not about that with March Madness. It's about the coach and the program. That's UConn. That's the Huskies. It's a very down year for them. I don't care. They have the best coach right now, probably in the nation, and also defense. They have the most blocks out of every school.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick UConn as well too. Dan Hurley, he's gonna have those guys playing, and even though they're not a one seed, they're definitely a team to watch, at least for the first round against Oklahoma. Next up, Colorado State as the 12 seed against Memphis.
Yeah, not surprisingly, the Rams are actually favored in this game by a couple of points. They are really good. Like I said, I've watched the Mountain West this year. I know all about them. Neek Clifford is going to be a top pick for them at power forward, but I'm not going to pick against Penny in Memphis. It's another situation where these guys are not rookies anymore. Penny's been there for a few years now. He's been able to rebuild his program, and they had no trouble in the American Conference this year.
Call it a cheap upset pick or not, I'm going to take it. I'm taking Colorado State to move on to the round of 32. Number 4, Maryland versus number 13, Grand Canyon University.
Yeah, I got Maryland. I love their center, Derek Queen, another guy who's going to be a top 10 pick.
I know Jacob Wilson, who I talked about in my opener, went to GCU, but that's not going to be enough for me to pick them in this round. So Maryland, the 4th seed, gets my pick. As we move to the 6-11 with Missouri versus Drake.
Drake's another one of those teams that seems to always be in the conversation when it comes to upsets, but they've never won a game, so I'm not going to pick them again this year. I feel like I'm always picking them to go to the Sweet 16, and they don't do shit. So again, I'm going with the SEC. There's a reason that these guys are here, and who knows how many will end up making it on to the Elite Eight and further than that. But I think Missouri could win their first round game.
Yeah, I like the rapper. I don't know if I like the school in a basketball sense. So I'm going to go Missouri. Like you said, the SEC was ridiculous this year. A lot of teams beating up on one another, and Missouri was right in that mix as well, too. So I'm going to pick them. Next up, Texas Tech versus UNC Wilmington.
The Raiders should beat the crap out of them.
Yeah, I'll second you on that one. Yeah. Fun matchup. Next one, those 7-10, which are always intriguing. 7-seeded Kansas versus 10-seeded Arkansas.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the upset here with Coach Cal and the Razorbacks. I like Boogie Flam, senior point guard. That's going to be a big theme with this tournament. If you got a lot of senior ball handlers, they're not going to make mistakes. And that's why I think they're going to beat Kansas. And Kansas has another disappointing first-round loss.
Yeah, I'm picking Arkansas as well, too. Coach Cal with the potential matchup versus another legendary coach is our next matchup. St. John's, perhaps the story of college basketball this year with Rick Pitino versus number 15 seeded Omaha.
Yeah, sorry, Omaha. This is not the time and the place you want to be. St. John's is on fire.
Yeah, I'm going the same route. Next up in the East, it's Duke versus doesn't matter. Yep. Give me Duke. 8 versus 9, Mississippi versus Baylor.
This is the first time I think that we've talked about it that I'm going to go against the SEC. Not that Mississippi State is any worse than Ole Miss, who's a higher seed, but Baylor has one of the best defenses in the nation. VJ Edgecombe, over 2 steals a game. I think they're going to be pretty good.
I don't know much about this game, but I'm going to take Mississippi State to win. So I do know VJ Edgecombe, but yeah. Not enough ball for me to know about that. Next up, 5-seeded Oregon versus 12-seeded Liberty, which is an interesting game as well, too.
The first thing I thought of when I saw this matchup was that one Fiesta Bowl a couple years ago when Oregon beat the crap out of them. And I think Liberty's going to want to get their payback. The thing about Liberty is they play so slow on offense. Oregon loves to go fast. If they miss a couple of shots, you could be down 10 to Liberty just like that, not get the ball back. I am going to take them. And I did see a Liberty upset when I saw some March Madness in maybe 2017. I saw them beat number 4 Vatech, and it's the same system. The coaches love ground and pound basketball.
Yeah, I've seen a few experts in college basketball say this game looks closer than it appears. And so I'm going to pick the upset Liberty. to get a win here as well too. Next up, couple of fun 8 teams: Arizona versus Akron.
Seems like every couple of years we get a big time MAC upset. I just am not sure if this is the year for Akron. Amazing season, but Arizona is another team that ended off the season on fire, running through the Big 12. Another team with some veteran guards. They've been in some very close games up in the hundreds. They can hang with anybody.
Yeah, Akron's a team that shoots the ball like crazy. I believe I was telling Skylar earlier they have 9 guys on their team that shoot at least 2 threes a game,
That's
I believe. And they don't play a player over 6'6" or 6'7". I believe I saw that as well. In that case, you can either catch fire and go on a run until the Elite Eight or lose by 50 in your first game. I think Arizona is a team that can stop them. And I'm going to pick the Big A to move on in Arizona. Next up, couple of 3-letter acronyms: BYU versus VCU for this one. What do you like here?
Really good matchup. VCU is a sneaky team every year out of the Atlantic, and I can't pick them though because I've watched a lot of BYU. I know that no one catches fire quite like them. Another team, they just moved into the Big 12 and absolutely dominated. I think they're going to get past the first round at least.
Yeah, give me the Mormons. The 6th seed moves on to the round of 32, which leads us to Wisconsin versus Montana, a couple of states that nobody cares about.
Another team, right? Wisconsin, this is not their first rodeo at all. I don't know how much I trust them as a 3 seed. They struggled against Michigan, but they have some real 7-footers, and they're probably going to scare the crap out of Montana.
Yeah, I just think the size is definitely going to be the difference here. This is I wouldn't call Wisconsin a blue blood, but they're in that area. And Montana is not that close to it. So give me Wisconsin, which takes us to a fun one for us, Bay Area folk: St. Mary's versus Vanderbilt.
Yeah, we do know St. Mary's a lot. We know that they usually don't come through in a situation like this. I'm going SEC once again, Vanderbilt. I think especially after they beat Alabama this year, they were on my radar. And, well, guess who's coming up next in the next game if they win?
Yeah. Unless it's Cal, I think I'm always going to take the Bay Area team to win their first game. And I'm going to pick St. Mary's to get a win here, even though I don't think I've watched them this year. Next up, Alabama versus Robert Morris. That's a school, not a name, or it could be a name as well too. But I assume we're both going Bama here.
I think they have a very easy path. Yes.
Yeah. Houston versus Suey. Can you tell me what Suey means? Is Southern Illinois University Eastern? I don't know.
I heard it once on ESPN, but I forget. I'm taking Houston.
I have no clue. Yeah, I think we're both taking Houston. 8 versus 9, Gonzaga in the Northwest versus Georgia, not in the Northwest. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, 8 and 9 is usually a pretty solid game. I think this will too. Georgia's got way more size, but I'm going to take Gonzaga. It doesn't seem like a first-round exit. Another team, really down year, but you know what? They finished really strong in the West Coast Conference. They beat St. Mary's, they beat San Francisco, and they beat Santa Clara, teams they struggled with in the first couple months. I think they're back.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of teams in the tournament this year, in between like an 8 to 10 seed, that are just not having their greatest years. But they got into the tournament either because they won the conference or just because they've been there so many different times, and you kind of trust them to get a win or two. And Gonzaga is that team for me as well. So I'm going to pick the Zags to get a victory here. Mm-hmm. Next up, Clemson, the 5 seed versus a 12-seeded McNeese team that is really fun.
Yeah, it should be a good game. Another one I've been going back and forth on because Clemson has some injuries, but that didn't seem to stop them in the ACC tournament. So I am going to pick them to pick McNeese here. I don't know, cool story, but I'm not quite ready to take them.
I'm going to go ahead and take McNeese in this one. I really hope that they show their team manager and their whole team walking out of the locker room for the intro, because I've seen it so many different times on TikTok over the last few months, and it's a very funny but pretty cool environment to see going on. So I'm going to pick McNeese as a 12 seed to move on. Next one, Purdue as the 4 seed versus number 13, High Point. How about that?
Yeah, another really interesting game. 2 completely opposite styles of basketball, and for that reason, I'm going to take High Point. I don't know too much about them, but what I do know about Purdue is that their conference, the Big Ten, was wide open per usual. And at the end of the season, they lost big games to Michigan, Wisconsin, Michigan State, and Illinois. I think they're very beatable, and that'll happen here.
I'm going to go ahead and pick Purdue. I don't have too many reasons for why, but they are a Big Ten school, and they're playing High Point, which is not a Big Ten school.
Yeah.
Illinois versus Texas or Xavier. A couple of basketball programs not having the greatest year. Again.
Yeah, I really wanted to pick a play-in team because it usually happens. And, I didn't pick San Diego State or UNC earlier. I can't do it here, though. Texas doesn't play any defense. Xavier's having one of their worst seasons ever after being a 1 or 2 seed a couple years ago. I have to pick Illinois. They have a European point guard. I can't pronounce the name exactly. Kasparis Janikowskis or something like that. But I have watched him shoot. And these guys can shoot the 3 ball. That's for sure.
Yeah, give me Illinois. As we move to the 314, Kentucky versus Troy.
I like what Mark Pope is doing. Kind of under the radar in the SEC this year, but I kind of have to take Kentucky here.
I'm picking Kentucky as well, too. One of the Blue Bloods takes us to a 7-10 interesting matchup. UCLA, another potential Blue Blood, versus Utah State. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm taking Utah State, another Mountain West team. I think that this year the Mountain West is really going to prove themselves. A lot of the really young teams are getting older. UCLA, not one of the teams that has adapted well to the new conference. Big losses to Wisconsin and Purdue recently.
I'm also going to take Utah State in this one. UCLA struggled the end of the year, so I'm going to take Utah State to get a victory as a potential upset there. 2-seeded Tennessee versus 15-seeded Wofford. I went Tennessee.
Yes.
And you're nodding your head, so you did it as well, too. Which takes us to the round of 32, where things can get a little bit more complicated for us now. We'll go to the South first. I have Auburn versus Louisville, and I'm taking Auburn in that game. Who do you have playing Auburn there, and who do you think's going to win?
Yeah, I also got Auburn, Louisville, and this shouldn't be too difficult for Auburn. This is one of the best defenses in the nation. They should shut down Louisville.
My next matchup is crazy because it's a couple of double-digit seeds, UC San Diego versus Yale, and I'm going to pick UC San Diego to move to the Sweet 16.
Okay. My matchup is actually flipped here. I do have Yale, but I have Michigan in here. The thing I like about this potential matchup is that Michigan's best player, Danny Wolf, was a transfer from Yale. They were in the tournament a couple of years ago when he was there. I think Yale wants to get their revenge here, and it's definitely possible when you're talking about 80 points per game against a team like Michigan who cannot shoot.
So do you have a pick?
I'm picking Yale. I'm sorry.
Okay. I think you suggested it, but I wanted to make sure that I got exactly what you were saying. Next up, SDSU/UNC versus Iowa State for me. I'm going to pick, again, SDSU/UNC, but I'm not saying which one.
Okay. My matchup over here is going to be number 3, Iowa State, and number 6, Ole Miss. Again, great season for Ole Miss, but the crazy run of SEC teams is going to slowly stop right now. Iowa State, one of the best defensive teams for the past couple of years now. It's important for the early games. Sorry.
Last one in the South, the Lobos of New Mexico and the Spartans of Michigan State. I have Michigan State getting a win here.
Yeah, same matchup for me, except I'm going to go with New Mexico. They had a really tough non-conference, and they played pretty well. They beat UCLA. They played tough and lost against St. John's. They beat VCU, another tournament team. Mike D'Antoni tends to choke these things. I think their championship about 10 seasons ago kind of took the controversy away from this program, but I don't know, man. I headed into this year wanting to pick Michigan State to go far. I don't like what I've seen so far.
Moving to the West, I believe we have the same matchup here, Florida versus UConn. I am picking the Gators to take down the defending champs.
Okay. I'm actually going to have My first one seed losing here. I'm going with UConn. It's all about the matchups here. Florida and UConn, they're both very team oriented here. I'm going with the better defense. It's UConn. Liam McNeely, one of the best lockdown guys, 6'8" or so, and can guard 1 through 5. I think that's gonna cause some problems for Florida. And I had to have one of these SEC schools losing.
My next game in the West is Colorado State versus Maryland, and I have 12 seed moving to the Sweet 16 as Colorado State gets another upset, taking down Maryland.
Okay, my matchup here is Memphis playing against Maryland. I'm going to end up going with Maryland here. I think Memphis, if they were in this game, maybe would be favored because Colorado State's such a tough first round matchup. But again, it's all about Derek Queen. It's the center right in the middle, 7-footer who can run. Not a lot of teams are prepared for that. And sometimes it doesn't matter how well you could shoot if you can't get to the basket. So I like Maryland.
Next up, I have a 6 versus 3, Missouri versus Texas Tech, and I have Missouri moving to the Sweet 16.
I like that a lot. I'm on the same page with you. I'm going with Missouri. A lot better shooters here. And it's not like there's a problem with the style of Big 12 basketball. They tend to go a long way, but it's not their time this year. We've seen that in the regular season. I expect the SEC to play pretty well in the postseason, too.
Fun matchup for our last one in the West, Arkansas versus St. John's, and I have St. John's moving to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, me too. I like St. John's a lot. They got their issues with shooting the 3 ball, sure, but Arkansas is a little too streaky for me. They lost to Texas A&M and Auburn and Alabama all in a row here, and those are some of the best teams in the nation. But so is St. John's, and they won their tough games this year.
Moving to the East, we'll start with hopefully healthy Cooper Flag-led team within the Duke Blue Devils, and I have them taking down number 8, Mississippi State.
Duke's definitely going to be on upset watch. They're without the best player in the nation, of course, but you know what? They got the job done without him. John Shire's done an amazing job. I have them beating Baylor.
Next up, 4-seeded Arizona versus 12-seeded Liberty for me, and I have Arizona moving on to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, also got Arizona beating Liberty. You got to have that guy who could take the last shot against a team like Liberty who wants to slow you down. That's Caleb Love. We've seen him make some amazing shots over his very long career, and hopefully he goes out on not a sour note here against Liberty. I got Arizona.
Yeah, I do as well. Next game in the East, I have BYU versus Wisconsin, where I have Wisconsin actually getting the dub here.
I have the same exact matchup, but I'm going to go with BYU. I think that BYU has had a better season. I think they were in the tougher conference, and I like that they have a full squad of shooters. In Wisconsin, we just saw they came up really short against Michigan. Really short, like 40 points in that game.
Last game in the East, St. Mary's versus Alabama for me, and I am going to take Bama here, even though I wanted to pick the other way.
I got Vandy, Alabama, kind of been a rivalry this season in about every single sport that they play, starting off with them beating them in football, of course. But I have Alabama again. One thing to watch about Bama, it's a really easy path if their number 2 guy, Grant Nelson, is healthy. He's got some injury concerns, but they got Mark Sears, senior point guard, too. They'll be fine.
Looking at the Midwest now, we'll start with Houston versus Gonzaga, I believe, for both of us. And I have Houston moving on to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I got Houston. It is the number 1 defense in the nation. They're not shooting as well as past years, but I think it's enough to beat Gonzaga. Gonzaga just has come up short too many times this season for me.
That's what I got as well, too. Next one, I believe we have flip-flopped. I have McNeese versus Purdue. And I have McNeese actually going to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, it's all about that domino effect, right? I came into the tournament not liking Clemson at all, but it's a great matchup against High Point University. So I'm going to have Clemson moving on to the Sweet 16 off of kind of a down year for them. But it's another squad that's been here so many times. I think they can make it to the Sweet 16.
Second to last matchup in the round of 32, Illinois versus Kentucky for me. And I believe that should be the same for you.
Yes, sir.
And I have Kentucky moving to the Sweet 16.
There's too many concerns about the Illini this season. I'm right there with you. I'm a little worried about Kentucky having a first-year coach there with Mark Pope. But again, probably too good to miss the Sweet 16. We'll see what happens.
Another matchup, I believe we have the same one: Utah State versus Tennessee, and I actually have Utah State pulling off the upset and moving into the Sweet 16.
Yeah, same matchup as you, except I am going to take the Volunteers. I watched them at the end of the season. Again, the SEC tournament was amazing. They have two really quick guards. I think that's going to be too much for the kind of defense they play in the Mountain West. We'll see. It'd be awesome if they shook the world, but I think Tennessee is one of the top 5 teams in the nation.
Looking at the South now, back in the Sweet 16, which we start getting to the fun names, of course. Auburn versus UC San Diego for me. This is where San Diego's dance, I believe, is over, though, as Auburn clobbers the 12 seed. Or maybe not clobbers, but takes them down.
Yeah, I got Auburn, Yale, and I think Auburn probably would clobber them. It's all about getting inside. Janai Broome, Auburn power forward, might be the national player of the year, and I don't think Yale has anyone his size.
Other game in the South, I have SDSU/UNC versus Michigan State. The 11 seed is going to keep on moving on to the Elite Eight again. Not saying who it is.
Okay. Over here, I got New Mexico and Iowa State, the 3 seed, and I have the Cinderella run continuing here. Like I said, New Mexico has been around the block before. They've played a really tough schedule. I think they're ready for this, and they're going to score a lot more points than Iowa State. They can't get shut down and freak out and throw up a bunch of terrible threes. They have to play their style, and they can get to the Elite Eight doing that.
Looking at the West now, 1 seed of Florida for me, which I know is already out for you. I have them playing 12 seed of Colorado State, and Florida, again, gets the victory over the 12 seed.
My matchup here is 8-seeded UConn against number 4 Maryland. I mentioned I love Derek Queen, big center for Maryland, runs everything over there. But if there's one team that can figure out how to stop one guy, it's the UConn Huskies. It's all about coaching at this level. So I think UConn continues the run. Doesn't matter. We get 8 to 12 seeds in the Elite Eight every year. This is going to be my pick. UConn, excuse me. Gonzaga's out.
Moving to the other game in the West, and it's a fun matchup. 6-seeded Missouri for me versus 2-seeded St. John's. I believe we might be different there. But I have St. John's as my pick to the Elite Eight.
I actually do have Missouri playing St. John's in this round 2. Should be a really fun game. I'm, again, sticking with St. John's. I don't think this is necessarily the average run, but I think that this is their floor in the Sweet 16, and I think they should beat a team like Missouri.
Looking at the East now, Duke versus Arizona for me in this first matchup, and I have the 1-seeded Duke going down to Arizona. Got a lot of experience, and I think that can play a factor as we get to the Sweet 16 and later rounds. If you've been there, it matters, and Arizona and some of their players have been there.
Yeah, also got Duke and Arizona over on this side of the bracket. I believe this is a matchup we've actually seen a couple times through the last 10 years. Should be a great game. But again, I'm sticking with Duke. I'm sticking with the better coaching and the better defense if I'm not really quite sure what to pick. And so far, that's Duke. This is probably around the time you could expect Cooper Flagg to be back.
3-seeded Wisconsin versus 2-seeded Alabama. And I have Bama moving on to the Elite Eight, taking down the 3 seed.
Yeah, I got Bama over BYU. Another game that should be very exciting, up in the 85-plus range for both squads, an absolute shootout. But Alabama tends to win those games. BYU, again, it's just a different style of basketball, right? You know, they can come back against Iowa State, but when Alabama's doing against number 1 Auburn, it just feels a little different, and I think they're ready.
Moving to the Midwest, I have Houston versus McNeese in this Sweet 16 matchup, and I have Houston taking down the Cinderella McNeese.
Yeah, if Houston and Clemson, can you call a 5-seed Cinderella? I don't know, but their run-ins here, they get clobbered by Houston.
Last game in the Midwest, Kentucky versus Utah State, and I wanted to pick Utah State, so I did, and I did take them to move to the Elite Eight.
Okay, I like it. You're on Utah State. I'm on New Mexico for the Elite Eight. That could definitely happen. I love the Mountain West. My matchup here, double SEC. Kentucky, Tennessee is going to be awesome. but I like the two guards at Tennessee. It's kind of like what Kentucky did in the past with their two guard systems, but I really like Zakai Ziegler, Tennessee point guard. And like I said, I think they're one of the better teams in the nation. I think they could beat Kentucky.
Moving to the Elite Eight now, just one game per region. And in the South, I have Auburn versus SDSU/UNC. And I have Auburn getting a victory here, taking down the 11th seed and moving to the Final Four.
My game is a very similar vibe here. Auburn and New Mexico. I would love to do it, but Auburn has been so good this season. It's one of the toughest conferences. They're number 3 ranked in the league, the nation right now, and just they score more points and they don't give up any. I think it's a really tough matchup for New Mexico.
In the West, I have 1 versus 2, pretty boring. But Florida versus St. John's, and I have St. John's moving to the Final Four.
UConn St. John's here. This one is so tough. But I'm going to pick UConn. I'm going to switch it. I had St. John's originally. I just think that eventually they're going to run into a coach who knows what he's doing. That's Mr. Hurley over at UConn. They don't need to score 90 points a game like some of these SEC schools if they don't run into them. And on their side of the bracket, they happen to not run into any of those schools. St. John's also plays a little slower. I think UConn can do it. Like I said, number 1 blocks in the nation for this defense.
In the East, I have Arizona versus Alabama, and I have Arizona, the 4 seed, moving to the Final Four.
Let me make sure I got the right school. East. The East. It's Duke, Alabama for me. I think this is where Duke's run finally ends. Alabama, one of the hottest teams in the nation. I saw them play Auburn close 5+ times this season. I really like Alabama, and I really want to see that rematch too.
In the Midwest, Houston versus Utah State. And I did choose the 1 seeded Houston to take down the Cinderella story of Utah State.
I got another top-seeded matchup here on this side of the bracket. Houston, Tennessee. I'm going with the SEC school again. Tennessee beats Houston. They're a little quicker, and I think they're the better shooting team.
Moving in the Final Four, where we have the South/West region first, I have Auburn versus St. John's. I'm going to pick St. John's to go to the Natty.
Okay. My Final Four on this side is going to be Auburn and UConn. The UConn crazy run finally ends here. Again, Auburn is not a team that I would want to bet against right now. They have a guy for every single situation. And UConn doesn't. UConn hasn't shot very well this season. So at some point, they're going to run into someone who scores 80 points, and that happens to be in the Final Four for them in my bracket.
East/Midwest region next. I have Arizona versus Houston, and I have the 4-seeded Arizona Wildcats moving to the national championship.
All right. Another SEC matchup over here for me on the other side in the Final Four. Alabama, Tennessee. Tennessee did get them the last time they played. Only 3 points, but I am going to take Alabama. They're going to have Grant Nelson back, hopefully around this time. Their forward, who I really like, great shooter. I'm taking Alabama, and that sets up the amazing rematch for me, Alabama-Auburn.
In my national championship, I don't have quite as storied of a matchup, but I do have St. John's versus Arizona, East versus West, and I'm going to take Arizona to win the national championship.
Okay. Caleb Love finally gets one. Mm-hmm. All right. I mentioned it throughout the entire time we were talking about it. I'm really hoping for the Alabama-Auburn matchup because I think that was the best game that I watched this season, 93-91 in overtime. I think Auburn's going to get them back this time. I think Auburn has the best player in the nation, like I mentioned. Good for Bruce Pearl, I guess. It's maybe weird that they couldn't get it done with Jabari Smith, but we talked about this with Ian, right? You don't have to have the best NBA prospect to get the job done. If you have size, shooting, defense, coaching, they got the whole package in these two teams. And I think Auburn wins the season series. That happens to be in San Antonio for the championship.
Yeah. College basketball always super fun around this time, as we know. And this next week is but definitely I'd say the most fun week to watch college basketball on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday with just games all day. and the round of 64, round of 32. Our brackets, of course, will not be correct. So don't think we're reaching the perfect bracket here. We're going to be completely wrong. And there's going to be a 16 seed moving to the Sweet 16 or something like that. But as we move off of the super fun college basketball, we move to the super boring NBA. Just kidding. Recently, the NBA has been a bit exciting, which has prompted us to do the top 10 title contenders in the NBA. I believe we did this a bit earlier in the year. I know we did power rankings, but with some extra time in the episode, figured we'd do this. I don't have any honorable mentions. I just have 10 teams.
Yeah.
Do you have no honorable mentions?
No.
All right. Give me your number 10.
All right. Well, we'll start it off with the Memphis Grizzlies. It's one of the best home records in the NBA. I think they get the nod here because they played really well against teams like Denver, Cleveland, OKC, despite having a tendency to stay healthy whenever they get to the playoffs. Definitely a very good roster.
Number 10 for me, it might be a bit of a shocker, but I do have the Houston Rockets here, and it just comes down to the experience in one thing, and also just not having that really big shot maker that I believe they can do it in the clutch. I know Jalen Green's had some big shots this year. I know they've gotten big shots from other guys on their team as well too. But in other matchups against other teams, I just don't think the Rockets hold up in that category. And I could see them just having one of those games where they need to win and they just have a ridiculously bad shooting output from the 3-point land or whatever it may be. I just don't trust them compared to some of these other squads. Number 9.
Yeah, number 9, I got the Houston Rockets right ahead of you. They finally figured out how to win the close game, which is good. Last week, they even came back against Boston and Cleveland. The emergence of guys like Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, they make things a lot easier for the guards. They've accepted the next man up mentality, but it's just like you said, no one really knows who's going to take that last shot yet, and that might cause some problems in the playoffs.
Number 9 for me, I'm going to take the Timberwolves here. They currently hold a play-in spot, but with Anthony Edwards on their squad, they have the exact opposite of what the Timberwolves have. And I know the experience in the sense of, going to a finals or something like that, Edwards doesn't have. But the ability to take the last shot and win a game for you is something that we know he has. I love the defense that they have around him as well, too. Gobert, DiVincenzo, McDaniels, Alexander Walker. Like, they just got a ton of dudes that you can trust to play defense, surrounded by a guy that is him. Like, there's not a lot of ways to say that. So, Timberwolves at 9. Who do you have at number 8?
Similar strategy for me here at 8 with Milwaukee. Things have been up and mostly down since their last title run. But Milwaukee's got something nobody else has. That's Giannis, who's been on a tear since coming back this season. Dame is also back. So I would love to see them get their revenge on Indiana or the Knicks.
I'm also going to take the Bucks as my number 8 team. 225-plus point scores right now in Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I trust them. They've been there before, playoff experience, finals experience. And I think the Bucks have the edge on a team like the Rockets or the Grizzlies. Number 7.
7, I got the Knicks. Not too much has changed in the East since we last did this, so I haven't moved New York up or down yet because we know they're capable of going on a crazy run. When Kat and Jalen Brunson are actually on the floor together, it's really hard to beat them. But that has already been a problem for them. We've seen injuries all over the place. We've seen this by Tom Thibodeau coach teams going back all the way to Derrick Rose versus LeBron. They burn out when they play 40 minutes a night. So I'm not going to move them in the top 5 yet.
Number 7 for me is going to be where I thought the Golden State Warriors. I would love to put them a bit higher on this list, but maybe last night and the recency bias of having a rough game against a team that was not playing some of the best players can do this. But whenever you have Steph, you always got to believe there's a chance. And adding Jimmy Butler, who has the track record of making big shots in big games, definitely I think matters. Good defensive pieces on this team as well too. And of course, when we say experience, like this team has the most of it. And Stephen Curry and Draymond Green and Kevon Looney and even Jonathan Kuminga and Brandon Podjevsky, Moses Moody, all those guys have gotten their feet wet in the playoff setting before for sure. Number 6.
Yeah, this is where I got Golden State right here. One of the hottest teams in basketball because they're 14-2 since trading for Jimmy Butler. And he's given these guys a new life, whether it's freeing up space for Steph, playing better team defense, getting to the free throw line. They're definitely in a position to be up here. I just am not sure if this is going to last forever. It's the only problem.
Yeah. Number 6 for me is going to be where I have the Nuggets. Maybe would have been a bit higher on this list if it wasn't for their 117 point per game defense that they have, which is not good. The shot making ability on this team is quite ridiculous, and the offensive output is crazy with Jokic, Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Christian Braun all averaging over 15 points, and then Aaron Gordon and Russell Westbrook at 13 points per game. The offense is going to be there. But the defense, as we know, wins championships, and the Denver Nuggets do not like to play a ton of defense. Number 5.
At 5, I got the Lakers. The Luka trade really shook up the entire NBA, and we all knew that those two would figure it out at some point, just maybe not this quickly. And LA gets a very big jump from me after their 7-game win streak with Luka and LeBron playing off each other perfectly. Unfortunately for them, there's been a lot of injuries, including LeBron. But this is a way deeper team than people give them credit for. Jackson Hayes, Finney Smith, Reeves, Vincent, they all stepped up in the loss of LeBron. They just need to not fall out of the top 6, and they'll be fine.
Yeah, I was instantly kind of intrigued after the Luka trade, of course, of how this would work with Luka and LeBron. And there wasn't like a doubt in my mind that they would like not make it work because these are two ridiculously talented basketball players. And they've had a way to make it work, and they do. And I know LeBron's hurt right now, and they're navigating that injury right now. But guys like Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura have stepped up. And I like them as the 5th best team to be a title contender. Number 4.
Number 4, I'm going with the Nuggets over LA, just pretty much because of Jokic. You know that those guys are going to be out there when it matters. Maybe not Jamal Murray every single time, but I wouldn't be too worried about guys resting in the regular season. They figured it out. I think Christian Braun is the ultimate X factor. Him stepping in for the KCP role is going to be perfect in the playoffs.
Number 4 for me is going to be where I slot the Knicks. Navigating some injuries right now, but they did just get back Mitchell Robinson, Jalen Brunson, hopefully back soon as well too. But this team healthy really scares me because Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, we know that those dudes are going to play like 40 minutes a game once we get to the playoff time, and they're not afraid of it, not shying away from it either. So they're not going to be too tired or anything like that. They have the playoff experience as well too, and the shot making ability as well in between Brunson, Towns, and Mikal Bridges primarily leading the way. Number 3.
At number 3, I'm going with OKC. Only a half game back of the best record in basketball, leading the Western Conference, of course. I really like it. They finally figured it out. They've won 9 out of the last 10. It's SGA, Jalen Williams playing off of each other. And talk about having a guy for every situation. They got so many different wing players that could guard anybody. It's very good when it comes to early Western Conference playoff matchups.
Yeah, if there's a spot that you just need to go get a bucket and you can pick anybody in the NBA, I think a lot of people are picking SGA. And I know there's the whole free throw merchant idea behind him. I don't give a fuck. If you get to the line to get your points that way and you still get 33 points per game, that's ridiculous. And shot making late in games matters, as we've seen so many times in the playoffs, and having the ability to go get a bucket anytime that you need it is so crucial. And the Thunder have that infinity stone in SGA and in the season that he's been having. So Thunder at number 3. Number 2.
Yeah, with 8 plus legit teams in the Western Conference, I am just naturally going to drop OKC to the bottom of this top 3 because I wouldn't be shocked if they got upset. However, I would be shocked if the Cleveland Cavaliers were upset. It's been the best record in basketball for basically the entire season. They haven't been tested in a while. There was a couple good games with Detroit, but I have no complaints right now. There's just one more team ahead of them who is a little more dangerous, in my opinion.
Yeah. I also have the Cavs at number two. This team, of course, having a ridiculous regular season right now at 56-11, kind of puts you in perspective of how good that 73-9 Warriors team was in the regular season, with how dominant the Cavs have been with, I believe, three 15-game win streaks now at this point. Anyways, shot making's there with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. Of course, the defense is there, as we know. And just kind of the it factor I think they have as well, too. But there's one team that is above them.
Yeah, that's the Boston Celtics. I've kept them at number one all season. Who knows what happens when they get to Cleveland? But before then, I'm not worried at all. We talked about it last time with these power rankings. It's like the same exact group, except they're a little healthier. And now Peyton Pritchard is the sixth man of the year on a really good deal. Everybody's clicking there. It's kind of like the old Warriors run where you just kind of know your five most reliable guys are going to be out there no matter the situation. And as long as guys are healthy, I think Boston should be able to get back to the finals.
Yeah, you can't take can't take the crown off the king until you do it yourself. And as of right now, the Celtics are still the number one team for me, even with being 7.5 games behind the Cavs. And you can get mad at that all you want or whatever you want to do, but the Celtics are the champs right now. They have a ridiculous duo in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They have perhaps the deepest seven-man rotation that we've seen in the 2020s era of basketball. They have a great coach. They play strong defense, and they're really good away from Boston as well, too, which I think means a ton.
Yeah.
So the Celtics are my number one team.
We rarely agree on basketball, which is cool.
Yeah. Which takes us to an interesting little segment. I know you put this on here, Tokyo Series Game 1 thoughts. Obviously, it was this morning. I didn't get a chance to watch this game, partially because it was blacked out. I woke up at 5 o'clock and was going to turn it on, but the game is blacked out when I'm in Santa Barbara, so that's unfortunate. I wasn't able to watch. But Dodgers win 4-1. Yamamoto on the mound has a good outing, 5 innings, 1 earned run, 3 hits, 1 walk, 4 Ks. Shota Imanaga on the other side has 4 shutout innings, but does have 4 walks, which bumps up his pitch count to 69 pitches before he gets relieved. And Ben Brown comes in, and that's where things kind of go downhill. He gives up 2 earned runs, 3 total runs in 2 2/3 innings, 5 Ks, but did walk 3 guys. No home runs in this game. The Dodgers bullpen, I think, is another huge thing to talk about as well, too. Banda, Kasparius, Treinen, and Tanner Scott combined for 4 innings of relief, 5 strikeouts, no walks, no strikeouts, or no hits, no walks, no runs, and kind of just shut the door the rest of the way through. 2 errors from the Cubs do kind of ruin the game for them. No Mookie Betts or Freddie Freeman in this game for the Dodgers, which was of note, but Shohei Ohtani did have 2 hits. Teoscar Hernandez had a hit, an RBI run. Tommy Edman 1 for 5. Will Smith had 3 walks. Max Muncy 2 walks. As the Dodgers get a win. What are your thoughts on this one? I don't know. Anything notable from you?
Yeah, well, basically, I wanted to do it here instead of asking you when we were talking earlier today, just because, I didn't end up waking up for it either, but I watched a 12-minute condensed game. And the one thing I wanted to bring up, too, was the starting pitchers. It seems like this is what we're going to see more of this season. Imanaga only throwing 69 pitches looked pretty solid other than, leaving a couple pitches up in the zone. But he gave up no hits off of those either, which is shocking. The Dodgers side, like you said, I know that the bullpen is elite. I wasn't shocked to see Yamamoto leave. Again, Ben Brown did not have it. He was wild as hell today when I was watching him. And it looks like no Mookie, no problem for the Dodgers lineup. Very disciplined squad. The Cubs, on the other hand, didn't look like a first-place team so far. And we know we're 1 through of 162. Of course, this isn't the end-all, be-all, but so far they didn't look very competitive, at least the lineup.
Yeah. I also think of notes with Yamamoto and Imanaga, obviously, of course, pitching back in Japan. Yamamoto's second time pitching back in Japan as a major leaguer. Imanaga, of course, his first time. Both their fastballs were up velocity. I think that makes sense as well, too. Probably a bit of adrenaline. So I'm not sure exactly if we'll see that. But both of those guys did have about a mile per hour jump on their four-seam velo from last year to this year. The splitter for Yamamoto was working really well. That was also up quite a bit in velocity from 90.2 last year to 92.4, so about a 2 mile per hour gain. Both of those primarily just splitter, four-seam, a curveball. And I think we'll kind of see something similar from Roki Sasaki tonight or tomorrow morning as well, too. Which leads us to our layups full predictions. My layup last week was based off of this morning. Shota, I had allowing over 2.5 earned runs. He did have some shaky innings, but navigated for scoreless without giving up a hit. So that was red. Skyler had Houston as an NBA team, -4.5 versus Phoenix, and that did happen there. This week, I do have Roki Sasaki under 12.5 outs. That's a pretty low line. I believe both pitchers yesterday were at 14.5. But for Roki, I doubt he gets more than 4 innings. I also would not be shocked if he gets hit a little bit. Something with his four-seam fastballs that is just not that great right now, especially with some of the injury concern that we've seen over the past year or two. If he was throwing 99 to 100, probably be less of a concern, but right now it's like 96, 97. And as Lance Brodowski or whatever, I'm blanking on his name, was saying, I think that could be a concern for him as well, too. With that being said, though, his splitter is already one of the best pitches in all of MLB, and it is a complete anomaly. So I think we see some strikeouts with that. But I do also think we see some struggles from Roki in his first career game. So don't be shocked if he gives up a run or two and does not make it through 5 innings.
Yeah, I like that a lot, considering they pulled Yamamoto, who was absolutely shoving last night pretty quickly. My pick, I'm sticking with March Madness here. We just talked about this one. 12-seeded Liberty is a 6.5 dog against 5-seeded Oregon for a game that's going to be really slow-paced, maybe score in the 50s for both teams. I really like 6.5 points for Liberty because even if they don't get the job done, they should be able to cover this.
Yeah, moving to our bold predictions. I had Teoscar Hernandez to homer against the Cubs yesterday. That did not happen. And Skyler had Atlanta over the Clippers on Friday. That did not happen either, unfortunately.
They suck.
This week, I have Max Muncy hitting a home run tonight. He's got some encouraging numbers versus Justin Steele in his career. He has homered against him before. And I think we could see a home run from him tonight. I don't know. I don't have much explanation besides he's been good against him, and I'm waiting for someone to hit a bomb.
Got to be good odds for a lefty-lefty matchup, right?
Yeah, let me see what's that's looking like on Flip.
Okay.
But I'll let you get into yours.
Okay. So, yeah, my bold prediction, sticking with the March Madness theme, that's going to be what I'm going to be watching mostly this week. Another one we talked about, that's number 10, Utah State. Kyle has them going pretty far. They're a plus 195 against number 7 UCLA, a team that just does not score that many points. This isn't the same UCLA we're used to. That's almost like a Gonzaga light. Great defense, great shooting, senior point guard. They don't have any of those things. So we're both taking Utah State.
Yeah, plus 295 for that Max Muncy home run on Flip. I believe that's probably one of the worst odds that you could get for Max Muncy home run because Flip doesn't have the greatest odds. So you could probably get that up to 400 based off of the book that you're using. But yeah, it's going to do it for episode 236. Next week is a fun one. 237 is going to be the full in-depth MLB season preview. We'll do over-under wins like we did last year. I thought that was pretty fun. Mm-hmm. We'll do awards. We'll do playoffs. We'll do World Series predictions. It's going to be a long one, so get your popcorn ready for next week. But any parting notes from you, Skyler?
Good luck on your bracket. Hopefully you go perfect for the first time ever.
Okay. You as well.
Everyone say, hey, dude, send me your bracket. I need a perfect one for this pool. It's never going to happen ever, and it never will. So good luck, guys. Good luck out there. Hopefully we get some great games and some great upsets. I'm going to give the Seahawks a C for this one. Sam Darnold has the potential to earn up to $100 million in Seattle. So there's going to be some risk here for these guys. They have to draft another receiver, in my opinion, because DK Metcalf's gone. Smith and Jigba's great, but Sam Darnold's a gunslinger. You got to have guys you trust out there. I do think the defense will be better. Mike McDonald retains Jaron Reed and Ernest Jones. Very team friendly deals. So I don't think it's the end of the world for Seattle. But I get the skepticism here. I've talked to a couple of Seattle fans, not necessarily excited to watch Sam Darnold, but I think it is going to be exciting at the very least. Like I said, this man's a gunslinger.
Yeah, it's feels like a younger version of Geno Smith a little bit with Sam Darnold and the style of play. And I think that bargain, I think they're okay with because they practically got a younger version of Geno and a third round pick uh, as their haul for that. So I think they're okay with that. The contract with 50 only 55 million guaranteed, I don't hate it either. I think it very much dictates on his play in year one, and I think we could even see like an extension if he plays well in year one, going into year two and year three. The other moves aren't anything too crazy, but if you get the quarterback position locked down, the other stuff will kind of fall into place. And I do like what they did with Sam Darnold, so I will give them a B minus. The guys that they lost, it sucks losing DK, but you kind of were prepared with that with the money that you were going to have to give to him anyways. So I think a B minus is reasonable for that. Moving on, we've done all 32 teams. Now we get into our favorite deal, least favorite deal, and most underrated deal. Skyler, what has been your favorite deal in the first 48 of free agency?
I got to give a couple of honorable mentions out. I think Godwin going back to the Bucks is big time. I think Will Fries, if he wasn't recovering from a fractured leg, would probably be my choice. And Drew Dahlman, of course, we talked about. But I'm going to go with the trade that still blows everybody's minds. It's Laramie Tunsil to Washington. It's not a signing, but I still count it here because Jaden Daniels is probably jumping for joy last night when he found out his blind side is going to be protected by one of the best tackles in the game, one of the most reliable guys out there.
I'm going to stick with the same team, but I'm going to go Bobby Wagner. And I guess I could put this as my underrated deal as well too, but I really like Bobby Wagner, and I like just having the quarterback of your defense and getting him back for a relatively cheap deal. And I know he's starting to get up there in age, but he did numbers for that Commanders defense last year, and kind of preaching the Dan Quinn Bible over the past 12 months to the other guys on the team as well too, and getting them to all buy in. And we saw that culminate in pretty much every game except for that NFC Championship game against the Eagles. I really like getting him back, and I think it's one of my favorite moves of the offseason so far. What about your least favorite move?
It's not a shocker here from me. It's Javon Kinlaw, 3 years, $30 million fully guaranteed to Washington. Same team, right? Isn't that funny how it works? I'm sure they'll be fine, like we said, but I still don't like it. This is more money than they gave Albert Hainsworth, by the way. Javon Kinlaw is coming off a prove-it deal with the Jets, where all he proved was that he loves to jump off sides, and as a pass defense-only guy, cannot get pressure playing next to Quinnen Williams. Good night.
My least favorite deal, I don't think I've ever been a fan of giving somebody $26 million a year who plays under 50% of their snaps. And Milton Williams does exactly that. I know he was great in the Super Bowl, and having a big game in February can make the rest of your life, really, and it will do that for Milton Williams. But I think he's like a final piece of the puzzle type guy, and when you don't have any pieces of the puzzle around him, it's not going to work out. And for that much money, I know Drake May is on a rookie deal contract, and that's exactly why I think we're seeing the Patriots do it. But I could see this coming back to bite them very easily, and Milton Williams just not having nearly the impact that they expect him to.
I saw someone say they must have hated Mason Graham at the combine.
Exactly. Like there's guys that you can get in the draft that are better, if not, close to it. What about the most underrated deal? What do you think here?
I'm going Najee Harris to the Chargers. 1 year, it could be anywhere from 5 to 9 million. So either way, you're under 10. If Jim Harbaugh can make J.K. Dobbins look like he did last season after serious injuries, imagine what one of the most reliable guys in the league can do. He's never missed a game. Imagine what this guy could be capable in that scheme. He's a monster.
Yeah, I'm looking through right now trying to figure out my underrated deal because I do think there's a ton of good options, and I didn't want to leave. I'll go with my original choice. I think Cam Bynum going to the Colts is a big one, and I know it's not necessarily uh, ridiculously underrated because he did get $60 million. But Cam Bynum, I think, is a really big, uh, just a glue guy in your defense as well too. And I think that speaks a lot for defense specifically to have the guys want to play for each other. And Cam Bynum with the his energy that he gives off, I think, speaks more than just scheme on football as well too. And he's a damn good football player as well too. Don't get me wrong. Creates a ton of turnovers, and bringing that to a Colts team who really struggled with that last year, I think could mean volumes. So Cam Bynum, most underrated deal. I think you could even flip that for mine. Put that as my favorite, and then put Bobby Wagner as most underrated. Perhaps
Sure.
that would be a bit better, but that's where I sit right now. And Demarcus Robinson just signed a 2-year, $9.5 million deal with the 49ers. So good for him there. But I don't know. You have a mock draft apparently, and I'm learning about that right now.
No, basically, a couple of weeks ago, what I did after the combine was just go through some of the top 10 picks and see if anything has changed since then. And obviously now most of these teams have new players, and we know, okay, maybe they won't take this position anymore. So we'll run through real quick. We'll start off with Tennessee. The rumor is still they desperately want to trade this pick. They don't want to pick there. They're not in love with Cam Ward. So that makes me think that they wouldn't take him if they pick there. So I have Abdul Carter there still right now. Again, it makes it really weird that they didn't get a veteran quarterback. Maybe they have to take somebody else in round 2 because I don't know who's trading up for 1, man, unless they're taking Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. And speaking of Travis, at number 2, I'm going to make the bold pick here. Cleveland not taking a quarterback. The rumor is they want another veteran instead, Kirk Cousins possibly. So I haven't taken Travis Hunter. I think he'd be perfect there as a corner and receiver. This is one of the teams that would play him at both places, I think. And that's pretty exciting because I think this is the most talented player in the class. Number 3 is the Giants. Seems pretty self-explanatory now. Another team, they probably didn't think they were going to get Travis, which makes me think he's going too. So I have Cam Ward, first quarterback off the board. Sounds like Aaron Rodgers and Russ are the 2 guys, and that makes me think whoever they end up with, they need to draft a quarterback either way. Number 4, the Patriots is where things get really interesting. Like I mentioned, I don't think Mason Graham's an option anymore. Too much money for Milton Williams. I have Armin Membu, Missouri tackle. He's the one guy who actually we know day one will be playing tackle. So that's why I have him. I still think that Will Campbell's probably just as good. We'll see where he ends up. Number 5, Jacksonville. There's just not a lot of corners I would take at this spot. So I do have Mason Graham still there. They didn't really get a D tackle. They ended up getting a receiver and some secondary members. So probably wouldn't take one in the first round. Number 6, your Raiders. If you notice, probably Shadur Sanders is still here. I'm still not going to take him, though. I think there's a reason that there's been reports about quarterbacks falling, and Shadur might be one of those guys. It won't be all the way out of the top 10, but for now, I think Tedoroa McMillan's more important to this team if they're really trying to win now. And, I mentioned it last time, too. This is like the one body you guys are missing from the offense. And I don't know about running back at 6, even though, I love Ashton Jeanty. Number 7 with the Jets is weird. I have Tyler Warren currently. I think they're going to want to trade this pick because they didn't end up getting Morgan Moses back. And you're probably not taking a guard at 7. Um, Man, the Jets always zig when you think they're going to zag, so I'm not really sure. That's why I have the tight end as like a placeholder for now. Carolina at 8. We know that they didn't really get a receiver, so hey, that could be someone. But with Ted McMillan off the board and Tyler Warren, I gave him Shamar Stewart. I'm gonna give him the best edge rusher available. Edge is one of those positions they didn't really figure out this week, yet at least. Number 9, New Orleans. You know I'm not a fan of what they did, so I ended up giving them Shadur Sanders. I think he would love New Orleans. I think that Derek Carr could teach him a lot because he's obviously not a bad player. It's just a really weird cap situation over there. So maybe they try to get the timing right with Shadur in a couple years from now. I will mention the Niners at 11. Now that they've blown it all up, we should probably talk about them. If I'm them, I'm probably taking edge rusher. There's a couple good ones left. Jalen Walker, Georgia. Michael Williams, his teammate, Georgia, of course. James Pierce, Tennessee. There's also linemen. We still have Will Campbell on the board. Um, there is very likely that Kelvin Banks is going to be on the board based off of what we heard. So, any Niner fans out there, most of our friends, there's definitely an opportunity to shake things up, like you said. I don't think there's a consensus for them at 11. They usually don't pick here, so there's a chance to do something special and save the team. And I'll stop there for now. The rest doesn't even matter, man. We're at day 2 of the tampering period. But hey, we're getting closer. About another month.
So, moving on to Layups bowl predictions. Last week, Skyler had a line for the Kings against Sacramento, or again, not against Sacramento. They are Sacramento against the Spurs on Friday. That did hit, so good there. This week, by the time that we talk next week, we will actually have an MLB game happening. So I will pick from the Tokyo game that we have with the Cubs and the Dodgers on Tuesday morning at about 3 a.m. here local time. I'm going Shota Imanaga over 2.5 earned runs. That's currently at about even right now. His fastball did not look nearly as good as what it did last year in his last spring start. And I think a Dodgers lineup will be all over that and maybe put up 3 or 4 against them in, I don't know, 4 or 5 innings, however long he goes.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's definitely not going to be as hostile of an environment for a guy who used to pitch in Japan, but there's definitely going to be some more Dodger fans. I completely forgot that this game was happening during that time, so I didn't have anything on it. But yeah, definitely some lefty killers in that lineup. I went 2 for 2 in basketball, NBA basketball, so I'm going to stick with it one more week before we move on. I got the Houston Rockets minus about 5 points against Phoenix on Wednesday. Phoenix, I don't love it, dude. There's rumors that Kevin Durant doesn't give a shit anymore, and they're going to trade him, and Devin Booker's upset now too. And Houston's been pretty good ever since they gave Thompson the keys to that team. So rock with them for one more week.
Yeah. Bold prediction last week. Skyler got his right. Had Chicago over Orlando on Wednesday, so there's his 2 for 2. I did not have a pick. This week in that first game of the MLB season, I have Teoscar Hernandez going yard at around plus 300, depending on what book you use. Probably even more for most books. But I think Teo leaves the yard.
Dude, how many people are going to bet on that first baseball game, completely misread the game, and never bet baseball?
A lot.
Well, like I said, I'm sticking with NBA one more week here for a bold prediction. The Atlanta Hawks are playing a lot better right now. I got them winning at home against the Clippers, who still technically have a playoff spot in the West, but they are just not that good on the road. It's just something about that new arena, I think, that gives them some extra life late in games. I think Atlanta should take care of them on Friday night. And by the way, too, the next time we talk, we will know the seeds for March Madness. We got tournaments all weekend. It's Tuesday, all week long for college basketball. It's been a really great college season. And I know not everyone watches the regular season, but trust me, this is going to be a fun year. There's not the same kind of blue bloods in the mix here other than Duke and the Big 12.
That's going to do it, though, for episode 235. Next week, we will not do an MLB season preview. That'll be the week after that, which is kind of similar to our format when there has been some of these Tokyo series or Seoul series stuff that we've seen over the past few years. Where there's been a couple of games like 2 weeks before the season start. We're not going to completely throw a wrench into everything and do our season preview now. So we'll see that on the 25th, I believe, with the MLB season really having opening day on the 27th, I think. So you'll see that then next week. Like you said, March Madness. Maybe we'll pick a bracket or something like that on the show, and we'll figure the rest of the stuff out. We'll definitely have some more NFL news over the next 7 days, so that'll be good. But yeah, we will see you guys next week. You got any parting notes?
That was it. It was just I remembered about March Madness. Not a lot of West Coast teams involved, I'm hearing, but most likely Gonzaga and St. Mary's and maybe one of the schools from LA will get in. And yeah, have some crazy upsets for sure.
Yeah.
All right. 2:36 next week. I'll see you later, Cal.
See ya.